Hi everyone, thank you very much for coming to the best session at conference. I'm not supposed to say that, but it is. It's certainly my favourite. This is a session for the finalists of the 2023 Statistical Excellence Award for Early Career Writing. That was held earlier this year, run by Significance magazine and the YSS. We put it on every year at conference. It gives people the chance to hear our finalists in person presenting their papers based on the articles that they submitted to the competition. My name's Britten. I'm the editor of Significance magazine. We've been running this award for several years now. It was created to celebrate young statisticians and data scientists who demonstrate the skills necessary for effective communication and who recognize the importance of explaining data-based stories to a non-specialist audience. Our panel of judges this year reviewed submissions covering a huge range of topics. We enjoyed reading all of them, and it was particularly difficult to whittle them down this year because I think nearly all the judges had a different favourite. There was such a diversity, but we did whittle them down, and we know that our three finalists, when their work is published, will entertain and educate the Significance audience. Between them, they tell the statistical stories behind the soaring popularity of Korean culture, the richness of Shakespeare's writing, and the best way to win a boxing match. So the winner was Robyn Goldsmith for Surfing the Korean Wave. The runners-up were Kenneth Menglin Lee, Boxing with George E.P. Box, and the other runner-up was James Jackson, who unfortunately couldn't make it today. His entry was how many words in Shakespeare's vocabulary? So Robyn's winning article will be published in a future print edition of Significance and online, and the runners-up will be published on the Significance website, which, by the way, is undergoing a big revamp at the moment, so it'll be nice to launch it with those. So congratulations to Robyn, James and Kenneth on making the shortlist, and many thanks to all the other early career statisticians and data sscientists who took the time to submit such interesting and thought-provoking pieces. Let's move on. I'm going to hand over to Kenneth first of all. Kenneth is a student from the PhD program in quantitative biology at Duke NUS Medical School in Singapore. Over to you. And we will have questions at the end.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kenny Lee. As I was just introduced, I'm a PhD student in biostats from Duke NUS in Singapore. And I'll be talking about my submission for the Significance magazine writing competition titled Boxing with George Box. So are there any boxing fans in the audience? Because I don't want to make a fool of myself if someone's like, that's not correct. That's not who that is. Anyway, so modern boxing came about in 1867 in the UK with the introduction of the Queensberry rules. That there is the Marquess of Queensberry. And although he might not look like it, this man invented what I think is probably one of the most violent sports that we know of. And modern boxing is a sport defined by a few punches. First is the jab being a straight punch thrown by the lead hand. Here you can see it demonstrated by Kazakh boxer Gennady Golovkin. Next is the cross, which is a straight punch thrown by the rear hand, shown here by British boxer Anthony Joshua. Then we have the hooks, which are looping punches, shown here by Japanese boxer Naoya Inoue. And finally, we have the uppercut, which, as the name implies, is an upwards punch, shown here by Canelo Alvarez. That's a pretty brutal GIF, I think. So these are all good punches in boxing, and they're all painful punches. But after watching boxing for quite a while, I started to wonder, which punch is the most useful in boxing? And if you wanted to win a fight, which punch should you prioritize if you want to get better. So maybe one of the boxers here can give us a suggestion. That is Anthony Joshua, gold medalist, Olympic gold medalist for Team Great Britain and former unified heavyweight champion of the world. After he defeated Joseph Parker in 2018, he announced to a very adoring crowd that, quote, "The old saying is, the right hand can take you around the block, but a good jab will take you around the world." And he also tweeted this 2 years before on Twitter or X, so I think he must really love this quote. So yeah, like easy enough, I guess. There's the answer to my question. But in 2021, after I watched Canelo Alvarez defeat Caleb Plant by throwing and landing 15 jabs to Caleb Plant's 42 jabs, but winning by throwing and landing 102 power punches to Caleb Plant's 11, I began to wonder, is the old saying true? Can a good jab really take you around the world? Wow, yeah. So first I had to collect some data. And so I defined around the world being winning a boxing bout at the highest level, usually, yeah, and so thankfully there's a website and there's a service called CompuBox that publishes the fight statistics from high profile fights, usually world title fights. Unluckily for me, they publish it like this as JPEGs, and right, and I don't have the best web scraping ability, as in I have like almost none to program, so I put in my earphones and threw on some podcasts, and one Saturday afternoon later, I had my data. That being the 263 fights tracked by and published by CompuBox since 2012 that I've graphed here. And so when looking if winners land more jabs than losers, we can see that winners land on average 43 jabs to losers 28 jabs. But I think there's more to look into besides just whether or not winners land more jabs. I wanted to look at whether or not landing more jabs will help a boxer win a fight. So I used the following model where imagine if you have a good jab, the good jab will help you land jabs, and landing jabs will help you win in the eyes of the judges. And so I modeled this using a logistic regression, and we get the following log odds ratio, 0.024 in the 95% confidence interval, which doesn't contain zero. So in that way, I guess we can conclude that there is a statistically significant effect of jabs landed on winning. And where an average number of jabs landed across this data set is about 40, landing such an average number of jabs would raise a fighter's odds of winning by around 2.61 times. So pretty good. But there's more to consider in boxing. First, I'll talk about the country of origin as a confounder. So Canelo Alvarez, as I mentioned earlier, he's a Mexican boxer, and he was able to become undisputed champion by barely throwing any jabs. Mexican boxers, or first I should say that boxers from different countries often have different distinct styles. There's an American style, a British style, a Mexican style, and what they often call a Soviet style, which is popularized by the former Soviet Union. So Canelo was able to, Canelo has a very typical Mexican style. He doesn't throw many jabs, but he throws a lot of power punches, and he's very aggressive, always pushing forward. Whereas Gennady Golovkin here on the right, he's from Kazakhstan, and he's a very good textbook example of the Soviet style of boxing. He has a very good jab, and everything comes from his jab. In that sense, country of origin and the style where you originate from can be considered as a confounder. It influences whether or not fighters have good jabs, because that's the style they're brought up in. But it can also influence whether or not they win via other ways. So I included country of origin in the analysis, and again, we see that number of jabs landed has a statistically significant effect on winning. But as I mentioned earlier, there are more punches than just a jab. There's the cross, the hooks, the uppercuts, and these are all considered power punches. And we're not just interested if a jab can help a boxer win, that much should be obvious. We're interested in seeing how a jab compares to power punches in helping a boxer win. In this sense, a good jab can help you land jabs, and landing jabs can help you win. But landing jabs, as I mentioned earlier, can also help you land more power punches. And landing power punches can help you win by getting you points, also by knocking people out. So in that sense, there is a direct effect of landing jabs on winning, and there's also an indirect effect of landing jabs on winning via helping you land more power punches. In that sense, the number of power punches then can be considered a mediator, and including that analysis, we get the following results. So I described a couple pretty straightforward, simple models, and then a question may come up, which model should we use? And for that, we go to the scorecards, which is AIC and BIC. And as you all know, because we're all statisticians, but this article isn't made for statisticians, right? It's made for the common non-statisticians. So I had to describe that AIC, BIC balances model fit with model complexity, and generally you want a lower value for AIC and BIC. So for model 1, we have an AIC of 689 and a BIC of 698. Model 2, AIC of 713, BIC of 897. Model 3, AIC of 681, BIC of 694. And the AIC and BIC score in favor of Model 3. Wow. But there's more to modeling. In boxing, there's a common phrase, it's just you and the other guy. Boxing is a sport between two people in a ring. And before I had talked about the logistic regression, and it's just a simple, regular logistic regression. But I thought to also analyze it using a conditional logistic regression, which makes within-fight comparisons. And it asks that, given that there's only one winner in a matchup, what is the probability that boxer A wins and not boxer B? And we can see that written here with the following equation. And these are the log odds ratios we get. So I've just bombarded you all with a bunch of different log odds ratios on different slides. I don't know if you're all paying attention, but which one had the best effect size? Okay, it's fine. It's right here. So these are the results for jabs landed and power punches landed. So looking at this, we want to figure out how does a jab compare to power punches, and also which model should we use. I had brought up before AIC and BIC, but there's more to consider, right, than just a number given to you by the information criteria. So in trying to figure out which model we should use, I thought, well, I started the talk with a quote by a British boxer, Anthony Joshua. So I thought I'd end it with a quote by a British box, George Box, who said that all models are wrong, but some are useful. And looking at these results, we can conclude that all the described models are useful in saying that a good jab can indeed take you around the world. At a highest level, it's good to land a jab. But is the jab more important than power punches, as Anthony Joshua and the old saying imply? Well, Model 3 seems to score in favor of the jab, but Model 4 seems to score a tie. So I think it's up to you all to decide which punch is more useful. Thank you.
We have a question for Kenneth.
I think it was a famous philosopher who once said that in sports everything gets much more complicated by the presence of the opponent. Mm-hmm. So the issue is actually that if I know that you're a jab man, I can react to that. Right. I can change my style of defending or attacking, right? So coming up with a general rule, if jabs are good strategies, is very complicated because there's going to be a reaction on the other side.
That's a good point. And I'm going to answer with a very non-statistical answer, which is I think at this level of boxing, the guys that had the good jabs tend to be able to use the good jab even just because they're that good. I think it's definitely true what you're saying, but I'm just disagreeing with you as a fan right now. Like Canelo fought Gennady Golovkin a few years ago in their first few fights, and Canelo's got some of the best head movement in the world, but Gennady Golovkin had probably the best jab, and he was still able to jab the heck out of Canelo. So I think it still works out. But as you're saying, yeah, I agree. It's very complicated, and there's many other things to consider, like this very simple DAG I put up here. Like, yeah, landing a jab can help you land more power punches, but landing a power punch can also help you land more jabs. it gets complicated. So as you say, there's a lot more to consider always going into, and it's definitely an oversimplistic way of approaching it. But yeah, thank you for your question.
Hi, really enjoyed that, by the way.
Thank you, thank you.
Would it make sense to scale like the number of jabs or number of power punches landed by the duration of the match, so the number of rounds? Because otherwise, I mean, for example, a very dominant fighter who tends to knock out their opponent very often would be penalized under this, right? Because it would land fewer punches.
So yeah, I had thought that. Unfortunately, CompuBox didn't publish that super readily. I had considered using ChatGPT to give me that information by just throwing in like, here are some fights, how long do they go for? But that was complicated too, so I didn't. I think that's where potentially the conditional logistic regression works out quite well because it makes within fight comparisons. So it is a good point that the length of the fight does matter and affect how many jabs you throw. But if the fight only goes for 3 rounds, it goes for 3 rounds for both fighters. So I think in that case, the conditional logistic regression handles that quite well. But yeah, thank you for the question. Yes.
Did you consider height, reach, and agility as covariates as well?
No.
'Cause reach and height are sometimes more definitive
Yes.
than
Yeah,
just
so
the number of jabs. And agility, if you can wear your opponent out
that's also true. And
without getting a mark on you.
I did consider it. I didn't collect it, but yeah.
And how many jabs do you use?
Oh, I'm pretty rubbish.
Me too. I boxed for exercise and I sparred once and I was like, I don't like this. It's much easier to hit a bag than hit a person. Yeah.
Just imagine who they should be.
Any more questions for, yes?
Hello, thank you for the nice talk. Can I ask a different sort of question about the process of writing the article?
Yes.
Thinking back now a bit, I guess, but were there bits that you found particularly difficult or easy to put into this lay audience terms?
The most difficult part was explaining a logistic regression and a log odds ratio, because it's like, I mean, yeah, it is what it is. That's why I included in the talk, actually, the average number of jabs comment, because I thought that would be able, I put that in the article too, because I thought that might be a way of just sort of grounding this value as 0.024, okay, this value good, because average number of jabs, almost 3 times. Like, it's kind of like I was hoping it would help in that sense. So that was the difficult part, and the other thing you said was the...
I can't remember either.
Yeah.
But yeah, did you enjoy writing the...
Yeah, super fun to write. Very fun. When I thought of the pun at the end with the boxer and George boxing, it was like a sign from God. I was like, it's perfect. What a good pun. Like I think I wrote that. Like I'd just written the introduction and had a couple analyses in R, and I thought of it, and I wrote that. So for the longest time, it was an intro, some crappy graphs, and just the conclusion, just that line. So I feel like that really made the whole thing come together. Yeah.
Don't take this too seriously, but is it slightly ironic that a guy from a medical school is talking about boxing, which is inherently dangerous and has some medical connotations to it, which are not very nice?
Yes.
Any more for Kenneth? Oh, yeah.
That was a great talk, thank you. So I've just got to ask this. Are you going to send this article to Anthony Joshua?
Do you have his email address?
Tweet him.
I'd love to, yeah.
Yeah, we will. We'll tweet him.
Okay,
Definitely.
yeah.
Any more for Kenneth? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Next up is Robyn Goldsmith, who is a PhD student at Lancaster University.
Okay, hi everyone. Yeah, my name's Robyn, and my statistical story begins with this man. His name's Kim Yong-sam, and in 1994 he was presented with a startling statistic, and this was that in order to make as much money as the Hollywood blockbuster Jurassic Park, Korea would need to sell 1.5 million Hyundai cars. Now, this might not mean much to me or to you or maybe the average Korean citizen in 1994. But Kim Yong-sam happened to be the president of Korea, and at the time, the Asian financial crisis was looming. And what the statistics said to him was that what was known as the pride of Korea was being overshadowed by a product of culture, a film about dinosaurs, no less. So Kim Yong-sam knew he needed to react. He established the Cultural Industry Bureau. He encouraged conglomerates like Samsung to expand into the media sector, and for the first time, the idea of industrializing culture was sending ripples across the country. So almost 30 years later, I think the presence or dominance of Korean cultural exports is almost impossible to ignore, and I thought I'd show you some examples. If you don't know who these 7 guys are, this is a great day for you. Please, it's my honor to introduce you to V, Jimin, Suga, Jin, J-Hope, RM, and Jungkook. They are the 7 members of BTS. They're on the Times Magazine list of the top 100 most influential people, and they have had more number ones on the Billboard Hot 100 than any other artist this decade. Squid Game in 2019 became Netflix's most watched TV show, and within 4 weeks racked up a staggering 1.65 billion hours of streaming. And this all happened in the same year that Bong Joon-ho celebrated with his cast and crew at the Oscars. They made history as the first non-English language film to win the Oscar for Best Picture. And girl groups, K-pop girl groups, have dominated the music scene. This is Blackpink. They recently headlined at Coachella, one of the US's largest music festivals. And they did this just months after selling out the O2 Arena for 2 nights. I was there. It was amazing. And I promise it's not just me who's obsessed with the growing popularity of Korean culture, known as Hallyu in Korean, or the Korean Wave in English. The Victoria and Albert Museum recently launched an exhibition exploring the origins and impact of Hallyu, everything from K-pop, K-dramas, Korean movies, Korean fashion, Korean beauty, and lots more. And all of this has boosted the Korean economy by a significant amount, but Korean Wave fans pride themselves on being so much more than just an economic power. So at the height of the Black Lives Matter campaign in 2019, Korean Wave fans bombarded Twitter, or actually took over racist hashtags. They put up videos like these. These are just screenshots of them. This is Dio, Daeon, and Kai, some of my favorite K-pop idols. And so racist hashtags are bombarded with videos of them dancing and singing. So if you're looking for racist commentary, you are out of luck. A little bit later, the BTS fandom, known as the BTS Army, they put their money where their mouth was, and they matched a $1 million donation to the campaign. And this might be my favorite. The Korean Wave fans, in response to some discriminatory policies of the previous president, they bought as many tickets as they could get their hands on for a Trump rally in Tulsa, and then didn't show up. So Trump was left with a far from full audience, which must have been a little bit embarrassing. So I think as we're all kind of numbery people, when we're talking about the Korean Wave, one thing comes to mind, and that's how big could this get if Korean Wave fans have so much economic, social, and also political influence? Just how much will passion keep growing? And will we see a turn of the tide, so to speak? So as you can probably tell, I'm kind of a fan of Korean culture. And I think when I was thinking about how on earth I would want to model this from a statistical perspective, I was thinking about one thing, and that's how addictive, like how expertly addictive Korean cultural exports are. The K-pop industry is characterized by earworms that you can't get out of your head, which are fun to dance and sing along to. And K-dramas are known for having amazing cliffhangers. This is taken from one of my favorite dramas. This is the moment that this detective here finds out the serial killer she's been hunting is probably her husband. I don't know who's not watching the next episode, because I definitely am, and I'm falling into a blissful K-drama binge after that. And it extends to K-beauty as well. This is the beauty of Joseon sunscreen. This went viral on TikTok, with everyone from everyday people to A-listers giving their own reviews. Essentially, Korean cultural exports are infectious. And this is like even more so in the age of social media, when it's really easy for someone, a fan of K-dramas, for instance, to share a swoon-worthy scene, and that clip end up on the feed of another likely admirer. So if we want to model this, I think we should model the buzz around K-content as an infectious process, a contagion with a K. And to do this, we'd need to split the population into 3 groups. The first group are fan potentials. These are people that have not yet been exposed to an element of K content, but they can become interested if they meet someone who is. The second group is the contagious with a K. These people are captivated by K content. Perhaps they've started learning Hangul, the Korean alphabet, or just tried Korean ramyeon for the first time. They're captivated and interested by Korean culture, and they're engaging with related content online and desperate for their friends and family to try whatever aspect they're obsessed with. And then finally, the last group could be the K community, and these are people that have found like-minded friends, so members of university K-pop societies or Facebook groups about Korean skincare. These could also be people that heard a K-pop banger and thought, nah, that's not for me. And I really think these people should try again, but it is possible, so they're included in that group as well. And what we want to do is model how people move through these 3 groups. And so to become a contagious after being a fan potential, we can say this is a product of the size of both groups, and then also beta, which is the average number of fan potentials one member of the contagious group can interact with. And then moving from being contagious to finding community is dictated by a probability of finding said community, gamma, and then the size of how many, or the proportion of the population in the contagious group to start with. And so now using that, we have descriptions about how the size of these groups changes over time, essentially differential equations. And we can solve these to find functions of what proportion of the population are in each group at each time period. And so if I have information or a function about how many or how the size of the contagious group changes through time, I can fit this to data. It's actually really hard to find data about how many K-pop fans there are through time. So what I've done is look at data on how many people have searched the term K-pop on Google. I've assumed that these people are part of the contagious group. They've recently been exposed to an element of Korean culture, in this instance K-pop, and they want to find out more. So that's an example of this model fitted to that. And so I've looked at the 2 elements, I guess, of the Korean wave that arguably have caused the biggest splash. This is K-pop and K-dramas. And I find when I fit this model, this helps me estimate this beta and this gamma. And from these, I can get out a really important piece of information about the wave. And in epidemic modeling, this is known as the R number. We've all heard a lot about it with the pandemic, but over here it's a lot more fun. It's the K number. And this is the expected number of interactions with fan potentials just one member of the contagious can have, essentially how many people they can influence. And what I find is with a reasonable confidence level that for both K-dramas And for K-pop, this number is greater than 1, which means the wave will explode or has exploded. And actually, K-pop is a lot more contagious, almost 3 times more contagious than K-dramas. Another thing that comes from epidemic modelling is the idea of herd immunity. And I'm not an expert on epidemic modelling, I'm just an expert on K-dramas, I guess. But I like to call it Hallyu herd immunity. And this will occur when the total proportion of the population in the contagious and K-community groups exceeds a certain threshold. Essentially, there's not enough fan potentials left for there to be more, for it to continue on. So this happens for K-pop at around 70%. So 70% of the population need to hear a K-pop banger before we see the number of new Korean wave fans start to decline. And what this also tells us, actually, for K-pop and K-drama, is that where we are now is within this kind of interval we've set for where this threshold is. So essentially, if we haven't already reached the peak of the Korean wave, it could be on the horizon. And I think what this tells us is the fact that if it's just happened or it's just about to happen, then the social, political, and economic presence of Korean wave fans is likely to be around for some time. And I think Donald Trump should be a little bit worried about any more rallies he thinks of holding. But what I really enjoyed about doing this was how statistics really does have a place in helping us explore cultural phenomena like the Korean wave. And in fact, here, the idea of numbers just cannot be understated. After all, as Kim Young-sam knows better than the rest of us, even the simplest statistic has the power to make waves. Thank you so much.
Questions for Robyn?
Thank you, Robyn. That was great. I wanted to know, how did you work out the difference in the K number for K-pop versus the shows on Netflix? And
Yeah. So I just isolated the data. I fitted the model to different data sets. So I looked at the search term K-pop and also looked at the search term K-drama. So I fitted different models to that. Yeah.
Is COVID or Hallyu more infectious?
Sorry?
Is COVID or Hallyu more infectious?
Is COVID more infectious?
Is COVID or Hallyu more infectious? Hallyu.
Hallyu. Yeah, for sure. They've got the BTS army. Yeah.
Any more questions for Robyn? No? Okay. Oh!
Well, that was quite an education for me about the Korean culture. I'm more from the Rolling Stones generation myself, but there we are. You know, as I say, it's somewhat different about this. I mean, it's great fun here, but clearly in a world of competitive, people are, sentient, watching that. Other actors will be taking notes, so there will be other. Whereas in something like COVID, COVID just does what it does. It's not conspiring to take over that, is it? I mean, so it is a little bit more. The real world's very complicated indeed.
Yeah. This is by no means a really good way to model the Korean wave. I think it's very basic. There's lots more you could look at for sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
We're great fun. Cheers.
Thank you. It's never too late to be a K-pop fan. It really isn't. I can give you recommendations.
Hi, thank you for your talk. Quick question. I'm really curious to see how this translates, jumping on the pop culture wagon train, how this would model Taylor Swift's cultural influence. I know it sounds so silly, but given what she's doing with the LGBTQ community, anti-Trump community, I'm very curious to see if this if your model will work for her data set.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Actually, it's interesting because the elements of the Korean wave, like K-pop and K-dramas, behave slightly differently. So lots of people during the pandemic started watching K-dramas like Squid Game, where they'd never done before, whereas K-pop, I think we all remember when Psy went viral in 2009 with Gangnam Style. It's much more like long-standing. I feel like I've made friends. This is nice. So Taylor Swift has been around for a really, actually, like, long time. She has a long-standing history of dominating the music industry, but I think the last year or so has been crazy. But I don't know how much of that is you would describe as sort of a buzz or contagiousness. I think, Korean culture they're so good at kind of taking advantage of Instagram and social media and things like that. But maybe, I don't know. I'm more of a K-pop fan than a Swiftie, I guess.
Thanks again. That was fantastic. Presumably your own K number is quite a bit bigger than the average, I guess. Just curious, have you thought about how quickly you could have seen this coming based on the model you were sort of fitting?
Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't really. But I think there's different ebbs and flows. And I feel like, especially because of the pandemic with K-dramas, because K-dramas have been around for a really, really long time, and especially in Asia, really popular, but they haven't quite, before the pandemic, expanded to Europe or America as much. But now I feel like really recently there's been this new wave. So in the way of like COVID, where these different variants, I think it's similar. You know, something like Squid Game comes along and captivates a whole new audience, and that happened because of COVID. So I think you could predict lots of different things from here in different waves, yeah. But my K number is huge, yeah. My family hate me, and my friends, like, please watch this drama, please.
Do we have any more for Robyn? No? Okay.
Thank you.
So just a couple more things from me. First of all, massive thank you to Kenneth and Robyn. It was really, really entertaining, really interesting. Well done, both of you. Please stay in touch. Please write more things and send them to me. Nobody else. We were supposed to have James Jackson. He's not here, as I said, but his piece on Shakespeare's vocabulary is also really, really interesting. So look out for that on the website soon. Two more things quickly. If you've enjoyed this session and you're not an early career statistician yourself, please consider signing up for the RSS mentoring scheme. Details online or ask at the RSS stand. Thank you. Secondly, information about next year's writing competition will be going online February next year. You'll have months and months to write something. The closing date will be, it's usually the end of May. And the finalists will be announced in July. How can you win? Well, have a great idea, write it down, take your inspiration from quality magazines. Don't write in an academic journal style. Make it engaging and accessible to... Imagine a really intelligent friend of yours who kind of gets data and stats a bit, but isn't an expert. Aim it at them. And yeah, make it logical, easy to follow. Answer the so what. You know, don't just sort of have a bit of research or a finding. You have to tell the reader why it's important, why does it matter, why is this interesting, why are we reading about this? Don't be afraid to break a lot of the rules that you've learned about academic writing, and make it fun. Does anyone have any questions about the writing competition? No, okay. If you have, you can email me anytime. So thanks again for coming. It's really great to see such a busy room. I'm absolutely chuffed about that, and I bet these guys are as well. So yeah, thank you, and enjoy the rest of the day.